They told me to come to New York. They told me the stage of the United Nations General Assembly was the world's most powerful platform. They told me that if Africa wanted to be heard, we had to stand in that hall and speak the words they had already approved. The words of compromise, the words of the compliant. So I went. I put on the uniform of my country, of my people, a uniform forged in fire and revolution. I walked out under the blinding lights. And what did I see? Empty chairs. When the powerful nations speak, Washington, London, Paris, the hall is full. Every ambassador, every camera, every pen is ready. But when the voice of Africa, the continent that feeds their machines, the land they plunder, finally steps forward, silence, empty seats, an insult of indifference. They didn't even bother to hide their contempt. They were telling us, without speaking a single word, your voice does not matter. I am Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso, and I decided then and there, I will not speak to empty chairs. I will not waste the breath of my ancestors, the spirit of Thomas Sankara, on men who have already decided they won't listen. If the world will not grant Africa dignity in its own house, we will build a new house, and we will use the world's indifference to fuel our fire. The silence they offered us will be the sound of their coming shock. This is the game they have played for decades, isn't it? They invite us to their table, but they tell us what to eat, what to wear, and when to be quiet. They lecture us on democracy, while their intelligence agencies fund the puppets, orchestrate the coups, and destabilize the governments that dare to say no to their multinationals. They talk about human rights while their corporations suck the gold, the uranium, and the cotton from our ground, leaving nothing but dust, pollution, and poverty for my people. They talk about stability while their military bases remain on our soil, failing miserably to stop the very terrorists they claim to fight. Terrorists whose roots trace back to their own disastrous foreign interventions in Libya and beyond. They created the chaos, and then they offered the cure. A cure that just happens to involve selling us their outdated weapons and forcing us to take their toxic, usurious loans. But their hypocrisy reached a breaking point. We are not deaf, we are not blind. We see the selective outrage. We see the swift mobilization of condemnation and aid for one conflict and the willful, criminal silence for another. The rules of the international system are not for justice, they are for control. And then, amidst the arrogance, came the final straw. A message whispered, circulated, and undeniable in its intent. A warning, a veiled threat aimed at African leaders. They claim it came from Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel. The warning was clear. Stay in line, support our agenda, or face the consequences. Consequences? The world's greatest victim-turned-aggressor, threatening the children of the continent they once profited from selling into chains? Let me tell you, when you are standing in the heart of their empire, watching them dismiss your continent with empty seats, a threat is no longer something to fear. A threat is a gift. It is the clarity you need to know who your enemy is. It is the final opportunity to show them they made a fatal mistake. I left the UN stage, but I did not leave New York. I took my platform to the real world, the world of media, of cameras, of truth. And I delivered a message that didn't just rattle the chairs in the General Assembly, it shattered the glass houses of global power. The moment was not for diplomacy. It was for truth. I looked directly into that camera, into the eyes of the people who think they own the world, and I spoke. They say a message came from Mr. Netanyahu. They say he warned African leaders. Whether he said it or not, I don't care. The intent was to intimidate. The intent was to control. And that attempt at control is unacceptable. The room went silent. This was not a diplomat's speech. This was a soldier's declaration, I said, and I want every single person in Washington, in Paris, in Tel Aviv, and beyond to hear it again. We are not your colony. We are not your pawns. We are sovereign nations, and a threat against one of us is a declaration of war against all of us. I addressed him directly. Mr. Netanyahu, you and your masters must understand. Burkina Faso does not answer to Tel Aviv. We don't answer to Washington. We don't answer to any force that thinks it can buy us, bomb us, or scare us into silence. Our dignity is not for sale, and our freedom is non-negotiable. I told them their time is up. The era of the puppet leader who waits for a phone call from the Élysée Palace before making a decision, who checks with the IMF before funding a school, that era is dead, buried, and we will dance on its grave. I reminded them of our history. They exploited our gold, drew lines on our maps, invented tribes to divide us, and left us with a system of perpetual dependency held in place by their colonial currency, the CFA franc. My final warning to Netanyahu was a warning to every one of them. Africa is not yours to threaten. Our strength is not in your approval. Our strength is in our unity. Try to cross that line, try to destabilize the Sahel, and you will find an entire continent standing on the other side, armed with truth and unbreakable resolve. The silence that followed was not one of agreement, but of pure shock. They were not ready for an African leader, barely 35 years old, to call them out in their own backyard. They were used to polite requests and quiet lobbying. They were not prepared for the voice of Thomas Sankara to echo through a new generation, amplified by the will of millions. I walked off that stage and the fire ignited. The Western media barely touched the story. They tried to bury it, to label it reckless or propaganda. They didn't want the world to see the truth. But their control over the narrative is collapsing. Because the message didn't travel through their channels, it spread through ours. It went from person to person, on WhatsApp, Telegram, and X. It was amplified not by billion-dollar media corporations, but by the youth of Africa. From the bustling streets of Bamako to the campuses in Dakar, the people heard it. They weren't just listening to me, they were hearing their own rage, their own hopes, and their own dreams of an independent continent. In Mali, my brother Colonel Assimi Goïta shared the clip. In Niger, the new leadership affirmed the message. Across the Sahel, the spirit of Pan-Africanism surged like a tide. The hashtags were not my slogans, they were the battle cries of a generation. Tashed Africa will not bow. We stand with Traoré. For decades, they told us we were divided. They told us our ethnic and religious differences were too great. But when the same outside force threatens us all, we remember that we are a family. When they see an enemy, they try to divide us. When we see a threat, we unite. The shock wasn't that I spoke. The shock was that millions listened and echoed the words. The shock was the immediate, unscripted display of unity that swept across West Africa, making it clear you cannot isolate Burkina Faso anymore. By threatening one of us, you have just awoken a giant. Traoré, this is not just defiance. This is architecture. The threats from the outside world, the empty seats at the UN, they didn't just anger us, they clarified our mission. We are not waiting for permission to build our future. We are building it now, brick by sovereign brick. We call it the Alliance of Sahel States. This is not another regional bloc with an empty charter and subservient goals. This is a pact of mutual defense and total self-determination. Our message is simple. If you attack one, you attack all. We share intelligence, we share resources, and we share the fight for our absolute sovereignty against terrorism and neo-colonialism. What does sovereignty truly mean to me? It's not a word in a legal document. It is the spiritual and physical right to control our destiny. It is the ability to look at a foreign offer of aid and say, no, we will fund and build our own schools and hospitals because our people's needs come first. It is the right to tell a foreign military, your time on our soil is over, go home. Mali did it, Niger did it, Burkina Faso did it. And we are not stopping there. They want to keep Africa as a chessboard for their global games, where the pieces are our armies and the prize is our wealth. They move their pieces, their military trainers, their mining companies, their currency controls. We are burning the chessboard. My vision is built on the foundations of Thomas Sankara, the spirit of dignity, of self-sufficiency, of refusing to kneel to any foreign master. We are doing the essential work, controlling our resources. The gold and the minerals, the diamonds, the lithium, the oil, belong to the people, not to foreign multinationals. We are revising every contract that leaves our people poor while others get rich. Building our own security. We are training, equipping, and uniting our forces to fight the terrorism that has been manufactured to keep us permanently destabilized and dependent on foreign military aid. Economic independence. We are working toward replacing the colonial-era financial chains of the CFA franc with a currency and an economic policy that serves African interests first, allowing us to trade and prosper without external conditions. The greatest weapon they have against us is the psychology of dependency. They want us to believe we are weak, that we are poor, that we cannot stand without their money and their soldiers. My speech at the UN, my warning to Netanyahu, it was a psychological counterattack. It was to remind my people, we are the children of kings and queens, the architects of ancient empires. We have the strength to build the future we deserve. They dismissed my speech. They ignored the message, but they are paying attention now, because the old order is crumbling. The world is realizing that a few men in the Sahel, a few defiant leaders in uniform, are calling their entire system of global exploitation into question. They fear the domino effect. So let me issue one final, absolute warning. Not just to one leader, but to the entire structure of the so-called international community. Your sanctions will not scare us. We will turn inward and rely on each other. We will trade with those who respect our sovereignty. Your bombs will not break us. We have already endured the worst of colonialism and its aftermath. Your empty chairs at the UN will not silence us. We will speak directly to the world through our actions, and the world will listen. When you see a united, defiant Africa, you see the end of your easy exploitation. You see the end of cheap resources. You see the end of your uncontested dominance. You see the end of your false narrative. Africa is not your backyard. We are not your resource bank. We are not your punching bag. We are building a new reality where Africa is a partner, an equal, a leader. And we will not stop until every single inch of this continent, from the Sahel to the Southern Cape, is truly, completely, and permanently sovereign. To my brothers and sisters across Africa, this is our moment. Don't wait for permission. Don't be afraid of the noise from New York. Don't let their threats become your fear. Stand up in your communities. Support those who fight for your dignity. Share this message. Our unity is their weakness. Our defiance is our destiny. I am a soldier of Burkina Faso, but I am a son of Africa. I delivered the warning to the UN and to Netanyahu. Now I ask you, what will you do today to build the Africa that finally calls the shots?